Today, and really the verse that's going to be going throughout every time we talk about identity is going to be this one. It's John 10, verses 1 through 15. I know that's so tiny, guys. I'm so sorry. Y'all have young eyes, though, so it's all good. So if you have your phone app or your Bible in front of you, it's John 10, verses 1 through 15. So I'm just going to read this, absorb it, and then we're going to come back to it. So, this is Jesus speaking, so this would be in red if you guys are reading this in your Bible, if your Bible's like that. John 10, 1 through 5. I tell you the truth. Anyone who sneaks over the wall of a sheepfold, basically a wall, like a pin, right? Rather than going through the gate, must surely be a thief and a robber. But the one who enters through the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep recognize his voice and come to him. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. After he has gathered his own flock, he walks ahead of them, and they follow him because they know his voice. They won't follow a stranger. They will run from him because they don't know his voice. And those who heard Jesus use this illustration did not understand what he meant. I think they were all like that when he spoke a parable like this. So he explained to them with a deep sigh. Okay, guys. Let me dumb it down for y'all. I tell you the truth. I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me were thieves and robbers, but the true sheep did not listen to them. Yes, I am the gate. Those who come in through me will be saved. They will come and go freely, and they will go and find good pastures. The thief's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy, and my purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. I am the good shepherd. Roll credits. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. Read that again. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. A hired hand will run when he sees a wolf coming. He will abandon the sheep because they don't belong to him, and he isn't their shepherd. And so the wolf attacks them and scatters the flock. The hired hand runs away because he's working only for the money and doesn't really care about the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own sheep, and they know me, just as my Father knows me, and I know the Father. So I sacrifice my life for the sheep. Read that again. So I sacrifice my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep too that are not in the sheepfold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock with one shepherd. Whew, that's good. We're going to keep coming back to that a lot over this next semester. So I would bookmark that, highlight it, whatever you want to do in your app or in your actual Bible. Just because I think that says so much. I know it's a lot of text. There's so much to unpack there. But today we're really going to be kind of more defining like what is identity, right? What is that? What does that mean to us? So if somebody on the street, right, just randomly came up to you and just asked you, who are you? What would you say to them? That's an open question. What would you say? Anybody?
I would say my name.
Your name? Okay. A human. Poignant. I like it. A mom. Okay.
I tend to say I'm a Christian.
I'm a Christian? Yeah. Kind of like, might not be the first thing that comes out of your mouth, but it's like you're kind of working up to that, you know? Yeah. You're kind of trying to fish to see the other person's a Christian, maybe. Yeah. Anybody else? Who are you? Think about that question for a second. Who are you? Like, who are you? Really? Like, you know, have a name, you know kind of who you are, but like, you've probably identified yourself in some way, right? The correct, like, the answer, no one said it in here, but I think it was because they were feel like, oh, that's too easy, right? Like, the one that's going to get all the applause if someone said it right, teacher's pet in here, they would say, I am who God says I am, right? That's the correct answer, right? Like, that's it, yeah, I am who, yeah, everyone's in here is like, yeah, I am who God says I am, that's right, yeah, that's who I am, yeah. Well, okay, that's great. And if that's you, let's hang out. We're two peas in a pod. I agree with you. That's who I am too. I am who God says I am. But here's the question though. Who is your God? Because if you say, okay, God is, I believe, I identify with what God says I am. That's great. That's awesome. And look, God is a weird word because in our English, we call God God, but there's also little g God, and there's a reason why I put the little g God up there. Because there's a big difference between, because we say God because we just identify that, okay, the big, divine being that is God, that's God, but that's not his real name, right? That's Yahweh. That's it's the God of the Hebrews, the God of, the Father, right? There's a lot of other names, and we say God, and we just think of the guy, but there's also little g gods, and there is a chance that you could know who God is, maybe even worship the big G God, but it doesn't mean that it's the God of your heart. It's who's sitting on your throne of your heart. You can identify who God is. You can say who God is. If you went to anybody on the street and say, who's God? They're all going to say, oh, it's the guy in the clouds with the beard. They're going to say something like that. Anybody on the street is going to say something like that. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not saying who do you identify God as. I'm saying who is your God? Who sits on your heart? Because that's what's going to define you. So, what could those little g gods be, right? It can be empowerment. Empowerment can be a god. Is it the culture that's around you? Is it sexuality, gender, popularity, academics? All of these things can be your God. Because it sits as your forefront. I identify as this. I identify as that. That is who I am. I'm a soccer player. I'm one of the best soccer players in my school. That's who I am. And that is what's sitting on your throne. That's the little g God hanging out right there. And that's what's going to begin to identify you. So why is it so easy to do that? Because, I know everybody's in here, well, that's not me. But really identify your heart, because even through preparing for this message, I've sliced my heart open and began to realize how many things are at least competing for that seat. They're definitely competing for that seat all the time. There's this constant struggle of things wanting to take that spot. And some of it's, like I said, good thing. Being empowered is not a bad thing. Your sexuality is not a bad thing. Your gender is not a bad thing. They're not bad things. That's fine. We should know where we are in those things. But, man, being a dad is a good thing. But that can, oh my gosh, that can control my heart so much. When I was living with my parents, being a good son drove me crazy. I wanted to be the good son. I wanted my dad to recognize me as someone he could be proud of. And that could take the place quick. And man, it's just that constant battle. Culture and all these things are so much louder. It's right there. It's right in front of us. It's so easy for us to just know, oh, I'm a son, or oh, the culture says I'm this. It's so easy because it's just so loud and right in front of us. And what it says to us, we'll start to believe it if we don't know who our true master is. Back to the verse, right? Culture is always going to clash with God. It just always is. Whatever it identifies you as is always going to be different from what God's going to call you. It is the thief. It is the person jumping over the sheepfold and trying to either take you or rename you and bring you out to somewhere you don't belong. So, what we're understanding from that verse is that, obviously, that Jesus is the good shepherd, right? He's the shepherd, but he's also the gate, right? So we understand, okay, he's the gate, he's the shepherd, so he's kind of the whole gambit. He's the whole thing that is for us as sheep. It's everything that we need is in that. Because you see, there's something that happens when we recognize who Jesus is. He becomes all of those things. Once we recognize it, like I was just praying a minute ago, right? Once you guys, he loves us so much that he allows us not to, he doesn't force us into the sheep pen. I know that sounds crazy, but like that is love. Would you love the person that like puts you into the birdcage? Like, no, the bird in the birdcage does not love its master. The wild bird that lands on its shoulder, that bird loves its master. Like, that's not love, guys. You have to identify who Jesus is to you, right? You're saying, okay, he's my master. And once he becomes that, he becomes the shepherd that names us. And I think it really plays out well in Matthew 16, verses 13 through 18. And I want to talk about three things that I've gotten from these scriptures. This is really where we're going to park for a second here. This is the verse I want you guys to chew on. The other one is, in John, is really where we're going to keep coming back to over and over again, kind of the baseline. But tonight, this is really where I want us to sit and examine. And I think, this week, you guys, if you want to write this down, I'll put it in the group meet, and make sure you guys have this. But this is where I want you guys to chew on this week. So, this is, again, Jesus speaking. I'll just read the first verse and I'll stop. So when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? So, I always say this wrong. Caesarea Philippi, am I saying that right? Caesarea Philippi? Okay. Caesarea Philippi, thank you very much. Never been good at phonics, but all right. So this place was called the gates of hell. Literally. That is what people called this place. And what this place was, it was this mecca of human culture back then. It was this place it was like, if you ever been to like Epcot in Disney World, like you kind of like jump around different cultures, it's like that, but like organically placed there. And every single god you could think of in the ancient world had a temple there. So it was like the Walmart of temples, right? Like you just like go pick your god, and just that's your thing, and then So like there was like a god for fertility, there was a god for wealth, there was Caesar had built a palace there, so you could go worship Caesar. Like every god had its own temple there, and so like there's even multiple options. So like if you wanted, trying to get pregnant and you wanted to go to the fertility god, there was multiple fertility gods. Like choose which fertility god works for you, right? Like there was all these different options that you could go and select which god was going to help you in that moment. And Jesus brought his disciples there, which first of all, wow, God, Jesus brought them to the gates of hell where they could see all the gods that exist, and he asks them this question. So think about that for a second. Who do people say the Son of Man is? So who do people say I am? Well, they replied, some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, others say Jeremiah or one of the other prophets. And then Jesus said, next slide. Then he asked them, but who do you say I am? Sit there just for a second, because I think that's pretty powerful. Like, he asked them. And Jesus asked this, guys, of you guys right now, like, who do you say I am? I think a lot of us know this verse. So Simon, this is Simon Peter, but he went by Simon at that moment. So Simon answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And Jesus replied, you are blessed, Simon, son of John, because my Father in heaven has revealed this to you. You did not learn this from any human being. Now I say to you that you are Peter, which means rock. And upon this rock I will build my church, and all the powers of hell will not conquer it. Dang. So he just identified Christ. He's like, okay, you are the Christ. You're the Messiah. Jesus, I think I know who you are. This is my answer. And Jesus immediately renames him. Immediately. When we recognize who Jesus is, he becomes our shepherd and he names us. See, Peter, we say Simon, right? So Simon, he was a fisherman. And back then, in that particular culture, he said, it was the honorable thing to do to stay and be who the culture identified you as. So, all right, your dad's a fisherman, you're going to be a fisherman. And your son's going to be a fisherman. And your son's son, he's going to be a fisherman. That's what's going to happen, okay? And Simon's like, okay. So he let the culture identify him, right? See, in our culture, it's really different. It's kind of hard to wrap our minds around it because our culture is all about independence, right? We're saying, our culture is like, oh, just be who you are. Don't let anybody say, who you are. You go be you, right? Don't matter what your parents say. Doesn't matter what the culture says. Doesn't matter what, your church says or whether it's good, bad, whatever. Like, you just go be you. You go figure that out. And look, guys, like, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that's a great message in some places. I don't think, like, the civil rights movement or women's rights, that wouldn't have happened if we didn't think those things, right? We hadn't had that idea of like, hey, like this culture kind of stinks. I'm kind of oppressed. I should probably do something about that. I feel differently about this situation, so I'm gonna go pick it. Like that's great. Like that's awesome. Like so many of the things that we as a culture now thrive on, like diversity and and women's rights and gender equality, like all things that we're working towards, obviously not perfect, but man, we're in so much better of a place than the beginning of the 20th century, right? Like we're in a much better space because of that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but in Simon's culture, that was villainous. Like for you to go and say that I'm going to go do my own thing, forget my family, I'm going to go do my own thing. That was like the villain in their stories. And now, like, watch movies and the villains are the ones that like, hey, you have to do what your family did and be in your business and all that kind of stuff, right? It's so funny how culture is different. But culture is culture, and the pressure is the same. And Simon was feeling that pressure here. He was like, hey, you're a fisherman. You're always going to be a fisherman. Nothing's ever going to change. And what's crazy is God took Simon and introduced him to his son and revealed something to him. And Simon just was like, you're the Christ. Like, you just all of a sudden just realized it and recognized it. And all of a sudden, what he was already being called up for, like he was already following Jesus, Jesus said, you're not a fisherman anymore, Simon. You're not even Simon. You're Peter. You're a rock. Everything that I'm about to do, you're going to be a pivotal piece to that. The reason we're in this room right now is so many of the was because it was built on the back of people. Peter being one of the main pivotal people. Like, the church exists because of what Peter did, right? Like, through Christ, that's what Peter created the church. Like, it's crazy. This fisherman who had culture had just written off as a fisherman, and here he is. It's just amazing. See, God calls you up to your highest potential. And that's not what culture does. Culture calls you to the lowest denominator. It tells you, okay, however you feel right now, go chase it. Go build a brand around it. Go do what you got to do to chase that dream, right? Like wherever you're feeling, whatever you're dreaming of right now, go get it. That's who you are. Guys, I didn't know what I wanted for breakfast this morning, and I ended up just not eating breakfast because like I had no idea what to do. Like my feelings change like constantly. Like how I am this morning, like how I am with this morning versus what I am right now is a very different vibe. Like how I was 10 years ago, oh my God. Like I am a completely different person than I was from when I was 15 till I'm 35, right? Like it is a completely different person. I think there was this guy, one of the older guys in our church. He told me that his wife has been married to 4 men, and but all of them were him. And it's like that's it's like, yeah, that's exactly right. It's like, man, that's such a good picture of like who we are as people. We're so fickle. We're always changing. So God, he calls us to something that we can't even imagine of ourselves because we can never even obtain it. Look, guys, Peter could never be the rock. He couldn't be the rock just as much as I couldn't be the rock. Like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I could never be that. I could never be that. Ever. Ever, ever. Same level, guys. Like he could never be the rock, the church that Jesus wanted to build. But through Jesus, through the Holy Spirit, he was able to accomplish that. God calls us to a highest form of ourselves. So if we identify ourselves and we let him name us, then he names us the thing that we could never reach without him, but that is our identity. Your identity is not what culture is calling you to be, because that's not who you are, because they're cheapening you. Everything that's going to try to name you that isn't Jesus is going to cheapen who you are. Because it's going to cater to what you are right now and how you feel. And that's just not the truth, which we'll come to in just a second. So, one of my biggest insights was like nothing the word even said. This is not in the Bible, but just inferring here. And I just thought it was just a really interesting point was, so this dude's named Simon like his whole life. His whole life. And then Jesus is like, you are Peter now. And he's like, cool. And he turns around to the rest of the disciples. And he's like, I'm Peter now. And they're like, what? No, dude, you're Simon. Like, we're not going to call you Peter anymore. Like, and then, maybe eventually, like, Jesus was like, no, call him Peter. Like, okay, all right, cool, we'll call him Peter. But I was just thinking to myself, like, on the trip back, like, to wherever they were going, like, wherever they were traveling to, how many times they called him Simon and not Peter? Like, how weird it would have felt for Peter. It would have felt so unnatural. And that's what I began to understand is like, guys, it ain't gonna feel natural. It ain't gonna feel natural. Okay? It just won't. Look, guys, I think we think that, okay, it's by God, so it's going to feel right. Man, look. All right. Does it feel natural to turn your cheek? Does it feel natural to forgive somebody 70 times 7? This is all stuff in the Bible we're commanded to do, right? Does it feel right and feel natural to love your enemy? Like, I don't think there's anybody in this room that's just like naturally like, oh, that person that cursed me out on social media, I love them. Oh my God. My little heart eye emoji. Just, No, like, not at all. Like, guys, just because it's biblical or even God-breathed or inspired doesn't mean it's going to come naturally to you. It's actually almost always going to be unnatural to you. Again, culture is going to tell you, hey, this feels right, it is right, man. Like, just go with the flow, be who you are, like find that inner self, explore find your center and enter into that place of where you feel like you're happy and feel comfortable, and you find your people, and you find the right skin you're supposed to be in. Go find the right gender. Go find the right political party. Go find the right club, right? Like, go find those things and you'll be good. You'll be happy. And that's a lie, guys. It's a lie, because it's pandering to your lowest denominator. It's saying you guys can't handle what makes you feel uncomfortable, so just go and do the thing that you feel safe in. And that's just, man, that's not living to me. It's not living to me. I don't know if you guys have ever been hiking or like go do outdoors activities. Like, it's fun to just go paddle around in a kayak and just be like chill about it, right? That's fun. But man, like sometimes you just want like just a little bit of rapids, just need a little bump or something. Like you want the thrill, like you want something, right? That you're hiking and then you see, like, you don't want to see a bear right in front of you, but like you see a bear like 100 yards away, right? And you're like, oh my God, there's a bear right there. And that's like the best hike of your life. You're like, oh my God, we saw a bear. It was so cool. It was way over there, but it was cool. Man, if it was like right here, it's like the worst hike ever. But then, but you want like something. You want to feel like a little uncomfortable. That's like, there's something inside of us that wants to be pushed to our utmost potential. And I know culture says like, oh man, like being who you are and being brave, right, is the highest call you can be. But it's just not. It's just not. We're going to explore that here in a second too. It's just, culture's going to tell you what to embrace, and it's going to be what feels right. And man, and that's fine if you just want to be constantly unsure of who you are. Because feelings are always going to be changing, and it's just always going to be inconsistent. So another point that I pulled from this was, guys, truth is not relative. Look, the world is going to tell you that truth is relative. It's going to tell you that you need to find your truth, right? Identify what you feel is correct, right? I mean, are you woke or are you not? Like, are you Republican or are you Democrat? Like, okay, cool. You've identified as this. Now, here are all the news channels you should watch, and here's the social media channels that you should subscribe to. And now you've found your truth, so go down that hole. Like get incorporated into everything, so that way that you're getting the truth, right? Like, they're going to tell you that when you find that truth, then you're going to be able to rest in that truth, and you're not going to have to, it's just, again, it's based on how you feel in the moment, right? In that season of your life. When they tell you to find that truth, it tells you to set your truth now. And so that way later, when things hit the fan, right, then truth will set you free, right? Everybody says that now. Like, Jesus said that, right? But everybody says that, right? Oh, the truth will set us free, right? You'll see it in like civil rights movies, and you'll see it at, on like some kind of law thriller or something, and whatever. The truth will set you free. So to make sure you're ready for that moment, you need to build a brand around that. You need to build your wardrobe around it. You need to build your whole being around that truth. So when it's time to be the truth, you're ready. And you can tell your truth, and you can stand on it, stand firm, and you can get through this adversity, right? When someone tells you you're not supposed to be that, or you're not supposed to be this, you can stand on that. Then that time comes, right? Hard times come, and you're like, all right, I'm ready. And then you realize, oh, it's all on me. Everything that I have now set up for me it's all on me. See, you thought it was freeing. You know, we think that it's freeing to set our own truth. But really, man, it's oppressive. Because all that weight comes crashing onto us. All of it. All of it, guys. Look, so many teenagers commit suicide, especially LGBTQ teenagers, or any kind of fringe culture teens, which I was very much a part of when I was in high school. Like, I was a fringe culture teen, right? Like, I didn't listen to the popular music. I didn't dress like everybody else. I was a theater kid, right? Most of my friends were gay. Like, most of my friends were kind of the freaks and the weirdos, and that's who I hung out with, you know? And like, there were a lot of skateboarding kids I hung out with, so I like wore the skating clothes and all these things, right? Look, guys, so many teenagers commit suicide every year, especially LGBTQ teens, because society and even the church, like, guys, I'm gonna be honest, like, even the church drives them to isolation, and then the only thing holding them up is their identity that they've set. And then they break. They end up everything because they've identified themselves so much with a certain group. Like there are organizations out there right now trying to raise so much money. The Trevor Project is one of them that's trying to just raise money to bring awareness to the LGBTQ teens. Of just the rate of suicide is just insane. And it's because they just understood that, okay, like, that's who I am. Like, everything about me surrounds my sexuality. And what a, man, like, you place all of that weight on that. And then all of a sudden you're getting oppressed and isolated for that identity, and it's all up to you. Everything. Everything is up to you now because the society has turned on you, which is wrong. That's wrong. And guys, like, if you're part of that, any kind of fringe culture, like, our doors will always be open to you. I don't care if you're trans, if you're gay, I don't care if you question any of those things. I don't care about any of that as long as you come through that door and we can talk about Jesus. I mean that. Look, we can talk about those issues in here, okay? And I will always point you to Jesus and the truth. And I'm not going to shy away from that, okay? So those are hard conversations to have. We're not going to cover them right now. But man, this church will never shoo you away. We'll never close those doors on you, okay? I want to say that first and foremost. But man, if you are in here and your identity rests on, and look, guys, it's not just sexuality or gender identity. I'm talking about everything. We have talked about this stuff, right? Whether it's sports or academia or even your identity as a son or a daughter. All of those things are weak pegs to hang your hat on because it's going to break because it's all on you. All of it. And see, when Jesus said the truth will set you free, he wasn't talking about truth, as in the word truth. He was talking about himself. He will set you free. He is the truth. Jesus is the truth. And if you believe that in here, then that is where we hang everything. We don't hang things on little pegs and nails. We hang things on the cross, which is never going to fall down. It's never going to falter. That is the truth. That is everything, guys. Look, and if you're not a Christian in here, you can't identify that because you haven't accepted that that's the truth yet. And that's okay. We're here. Let's talk about that. But if you're a Christian in here, everything about you, how you identify yourself, all of it needs to be hung on the cross, on Jesus himself, on who he says you are. All right, I'm going to wrap up. But Look, you need somebody to name you. You have to have somebody name you. Naming yourself is an illusion. You can't name yourself. You just won't. You might think you're naming yourself, but culture is inferring your decisions. Guys, you can't make your own mind up of so many things. I can't make my mind up of so many things. There's things that I want that contradict each other. Like, back in college, I was dating Samantha, and I was like, I want to be a starving artist in New York and do the whole theater thing and live in Brooklyn and live the whole boho style and do that whole thing. And then I met Samantha, and she was like, I'm not doing that. And so all of a sudden I was like, okay. And I wanted both things. What was my identity in, right? Like, whoa. Like, even our own desires can contradict each other. But guys, culture is going to name you. It will if you let it take the chance. Something is going to name you. You need to let Jesus be the one that names you. Something is going to name you. If someone was going to name me, I would want it to be somebody that I admire. It'd be somebody that I knew would be strong enough to deal with anything that would come their way. That's been through the same things that I've been through. That knows way more than me. Who can see my future, who can see my past, who can see my present. Your name, it's like a tattoo, guys. It's not going to be removed. Like, I don't care if you go change your name somewhere, that you go change it legally or something. Like, you will always have the name that you were given at birth. Jesus gave you guys a name the moment you were born. Not the moment you were born. In the womb, he identified who you were going to be, who you are. He had a purpose, a plan for you. He designed you for a purpose, and he named you. He named you. He is the good shepherd. He is the gate. He is everything. And if we want to know what he sounds like, we have to submit to the name that he calls us. God, I'm going to say it one more time. Naming yourself is an illusion. Culture will adapt to whatever it needs to do to name you. You guys have to choose who's going to name you. You have to choose. Last but not least, when Jesus died on the cross, that was the most practical way to say, I want to be the one who takes care of everything for you. Everything. So if you guys identify with what he did, you have a name waiting for you. Right now. Just go accept it. Go accept the name.